Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om, I bow to the Lord Vasudeva. Joy to you, friends. We're reading where Arjuna has asked Krishna about a man of wisdom. What does he do? How does he sit? How does he talk? How does he look? And Sri Krishna now answers. He said, he whose consciousness is unshaken by affliction and is not excited by good fortune, he who no longer hungers for earthly affection and is without fear and anger, such a man qualifies to be considered a Muni of steady discrimination. Now, what causes a person to be shaken as opposed to unshaken by affliction? Well, when you think that anything will satisfy you that is not of your own inner nature, that to you is affliction. When you suddenly find you have cancer and will be dead in 2 days, that for most people would be an affliction. When you suddenly find that the stock market has crashed and you've lost everything and all your money is gone, you can no longer even afford to keep your own home and you don't know what you're going to do, that would have to be classed as an affliction. And any great misfortune in life, if you can be not touched by it, then you're not the usual kind of person. You go through this world, but you are not touched by good or bad fortune. This is not the usual kind of person. So what Krishna is saying is that one who has achieved this state inwardly, he is not touched. Now outwardly he may seem to be touched because he goes along with the game. As Yogananda was talking about the movie of the life of Saint Bernadette, and Bernadette Soubirous of Lourdes, and the song of Bernadette is the movie, and he was weeping because it reminded him of so many things that he had gone through with his own family and the tests and the non-acceptance of him and so on. And then he said, I look up at the camera and I saw the same light coming down onto the screen, producing all the show. It was just shadows and light. And he said, that is what this life is like. And he said another time, he drew many of his examples from movies. He said people were shouting and upset and weeping and so on. And he said, if they would only look up and see the light, they would see it's only shadows and light. There's nothing really going on. But then why did Master say that he himself was weeping? I think he was playing the role because I never saw him touched inwardly by anything, but I would see him sometimes seem to be outwardly, like on his last day when he was given some coconuts and he was saying, oh, now for the juice and how wonderful. But I looked at his eyes and I saw that they were not touched at all. He was going through this just as a show, and it was his last night before he left this world. He said he saw me, and with my sort of questioning expression, he became more serious then, and he went to the lift to go upstairs, and he said, I have a big day today, tomorrow. Wish me luck. It was the next day he left this body. But he was sort of playing this game. He didn't feel attached to anything. And that was how he was able to create such very great things in this world, in this life. But you know, for example, when one man betrayed him and took away all his money and nearly destroyed his work, and he was lamenting, my best friend has betrayed me, and you would have thought that it was something completely unexpected. But you know, years earlier, he had a friend of ours went to India and talked to a boyhood friend of his, Tulsi Bose. And Tulsi Bose told this woman that Even as boys, he said, someday this man will betray me and marry a white woman. It happened just as he had seen, but he knew it would happen. I think it's sometimes sort of like when you know the whole show and you've seen the movie, you know what's coming, but you'd rather pretend you hadn't seen it because it's more interesting. So an avatar, unlike a saint who has to be very careful about what he does because he's got to protect his attunement, an avatar doesn't have to protect his attunement. An avatar is a divine incarnation, one who is completely free and comes back into this world. And so Jesus could weep on the cross and Jesus could weep for Jerusalem and so on, but he wasn't really touched inside. None of them, none of the great masters are ever touched, but they can go through the show of it because if they didn't, they wouldn't seem human. People wouldn't relate to them. But they don't have the same need to protect themselves from falling into a wrong attitude or something because they're completely beyond that. It's a show with them. But this is what I saw in Master, that going through the show, sometimes reacting with joy or sorrow or something, I'd look into his eyes. It was as if there was nobody home. There was the infinite consciousness. I never saw him touched. And that was the extraordinary thing about him. So it is that you have no desire for love. You have no desire for people to love you. And one reason you don't is because you're too busy loving other people. You don't think how they respond. You think in terms of what you can give. How do you overcome that desire? By loving others and by loving them all equally. This desire for personal love and for reassurance and understanding and so on, this is normal for human being. Most people want to be loved, but finally they understand that love is something independent of something given to the ego, so that they can love even when people are harsh to them, even when people are unkind, even when people persecute them. They may respond appropriately in an outward way, but inwardly they can't help loving because they see that everybody wants that same bliss. Some people are far from deserving it so far. Some people may be criminal and very hard-hearted. And yet underneath it all there is this soul struggling for self-expression. So you don't need love from anyone. You need it from God and he needs it from you. That's enough. The one thing God doesn't have is your love. The one thing he hungers for is your love. And so he's affected by neither affection and he feels no anger and no fear. Fear you feel when you are afraid that you won't get or won't be able to keep something that is precious to you. But if nothing is precious to you, then it doesn't matter. And if your own body is not precious to you because it's God's body, it's not your body, then what does it matter? And so whatever thing may come to you, you don't go to the doctor or to the dentist with fear that the dentist may find a cavity or the doctor may find some disease. Whatever comes, don't be touched inwardly. And I have been so happy to see that our members in our Ananda community are more and more where they have that kind of consciousness that nothing touches them. If they have cancer, fine. Their attitude is positive, as a result of which they usually become cured. And so the teaching here is a man with such qualities is considered a muni of steady discrimination. When you are untouched by anything, then you are a muni of steady discrimination. Joy to you.